I'm Dr. Desiree Hurtak with Desiree Hurtak with the Academy for Future Science, which works on world health problems, great changes with the human society. We're pleased to be here today with Dr. Stephen Sinatra, author of many books, and we're really delighted to look at the critical situation we're facing with situations of stress and related problems worldwide on the human community.
Right. Let me say a few words about Dr. Stephen Sinatra, other than the fact that he's a good friend of Dr. Hurtak and myself. He's a board-certified cardiologist. He lectures throughout the world. He's done about 20 books now in his name. He's also a psychotherapist, trained in Gestalt as well as being credentialed in bioenergetic psychotherapy by the International Institute of Bioenergetic Analysis. He's also a certified nutrition specialist by the American College of Nutrition, and he's an anti-aging specialist and acknowledged by the anti-aging medical institutes around the world, where he is requested normally to do conferences. Dr. Sinatra has also worked in both clinical experience as well as understanding how to reverse heart disease. And what we're going to be talking about today is one of his books, which he wrote a little while ago, called Heartbreak and Heart Disease. And I think he's one of the few that clearly tie in the fact that what we think and what we do on a interpersonal level or psychotherapy level relates also to our physical bodies. I know this is what many of our audience are interested in. Dr. Sinatra, how did you get into this type of research, and why is this important in terms of helping how we think cure who we are?
Well, you know, when I got my boards in cardiology, that was in 1977, I had finished 3 years of internal medicine and 2 years of a cardiovascular fellowship. Basically, I was seeing a lot of sudden cardiac death. And I was seeing it in engineers, and they were working at Pratt & Whitney aircraft, at Colt Firearms. They were working at the submarine base in Groton, Connecticut. And what was happening was these PhD, highly educated people were losing their jobs. And what happened was, I was working in a cath lab. I was a young cardiologist, a training cardiologist, and these people were coming in with heart attacks and sudden death in their mid-30s. And it bothered me because I was just like them. In other words, I was hard driving, I studied a lot, I was in my head a lot, and I realized there was a connection between the brain and the heart. I call it the heart-brain hotline. And I started to study cardiology from the neck up, and I thought emotional stress was the biggest risk factor in heart disease.
This is really interesting because Dr. Hurtak wrote a book called End of Suffering, which I think is somewhat related to what we're talking about today. And it was co-authored with our friend, physicist Russell Targ. And Russell worked at Lockheed, and he says that the Lockheed pension plan is actually extremely lucrative because many of these
PhD specialists died when they got their pink slips that they had to retire or leave, and the mind was not able to handle this. So our question to you, in your studies, the case histories that you looked at, what seem to be the prominent trigger mechanisms that we have to be careful of?
Well, the biggest thing that I've seen was heartbreak. Let me give you an example. When I was practicing cardiology on a day-to-day basis, I had this sports writer. He was 60 years old, a young guy, and he was forced to retire from the newspaper because he was 60. I mean, that was the rule. And he immediately developed heart disease, and he went on to have a massive heart attack. And I wrote about him in my book on Heartbreak and Heart Disease because for a male, the loss of a vital connection can be one's job. And this is what happened with the engineers I saw who were losing their jobs because this is a loss of a vital connection. I've had many other cases where it was a loss of a relationship. For example, I had a woman going through a divorce, and she found out that her husband didn't love her anymore and was actually seeing other women, and she had acute heartbreak. And again, it's this loss of a vital connection. Whenever a vital connection is severed, the heart can literally go out of rhythm.
Oh, so is that what really happens, that there's a rhythmic disorder, or do you start developing things like arteriosclerosis, or what really happens when you have a bad problem emotionally?
Well, emotionally, the heart can literally break. It can really go out of rhythm. In fact, Walter Cannon studied voodoo death, which is really the same situation. He studied this in New Guinea, in the islands of the Pacific. where if the witch doctor would place a curse on somebody in a tribe, was it the witch doctor's curse that killed the patient or the person, or was it the overwhelming loneliness from being ostracized from the tribe? Was it the loneliness that went on? And again, it's the loss of this vital connection. Whenever we lose a vital connection, whether it's with a job, with community, a relationship, the heart can literally break and go out of rhythm.
Desiree and I have studied with some of the shamans in Africa and South America, and we realize there's a psychosomatic linkage
Yes.
that one has with one's tribe or one's group. And if that, as you said, is injured in some way, through fear, through imbalances of one sort or the other, the mind goes into a spin, the social entrapment begins to work adversely according to one's health recipe.
Also, there's a type of self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think someone says to you, you're going to die, then chances are you're putting that into your mindset that you are going to die. So that whole scenario really needs to be changed. And I think that's one of the most important things, and I know you're also in favor of this, that you change to a positive way of new possibilities. So you think about how you can survive. You don't think of how you are going to die. You think of ways to give nutrition to your body to be better so that you can overcome some of these difficulties that you face.
Right, and you've been called a metabolic cardiologist. Could you explain what that really means, and what does this mean in terms of putting together a vademecum, a list of what we can do for ourselves so we can avoid the stress factor that could be very disastrous now with all of the problems we're facing as a world community?
Sure. Metabolic cardiology is a legacy that I believe I'll leave behind me, because I came across it maybe 30 years ago with the advent of coenzyme Q10. I've done animal research on CoQ10, human research. I've written books on CoQ10. I've studied thousands of people on CoQ10. And it's a part of my formula. I call it the awesome foursome for building ATP in the body. In other words, the heart is all about energy. It's about energy. And with anybody with any form of heart disease, even as minimal as high blood pressure or an enlarged heart, we've seen this even in cases of severe mitral valve prolapse where the mitral valve is leaking a lot of blood. We've seen it in diabetic hearts, heart disease, with people with heart attack, valvular disease. But any form of heart disease, the heart struggles to make its energy. And in the process, it builds up ATP, but it's an energy deficit. In other words, it's like having a hole in your pocket. You're putting change in your pocket, and if there's a hole in the pocket, you're going to keep losing your change. And the same thing occurs with the heart. So in order to build up the energy supplies and to improve on the ATP deficit is to give the heart energy substrates that it needs, like coenzyme Q10 and ribose and carnitine, which incidentally the body makes. But, and again, in the situation of heart disease, the body can't make it back fast enough because it's utilized so quickly that, especially under situations where the heart's not getting enough oxygen, we get a marked energy deficit. And when that happens, we're always behind. So if you give the awesome foursome, coenzyme Q10 and ribose, magnesium, and the carnitines, you can increase not only ATP buildup, but also turnover, where these patients really reduce their suffering, and many of them live longer as well.
For the non-medical audience, we're speaking to ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is one of the most important aspects of the human anatomy. And why is it so important? Is it a molecular machine of some sort, or is it, in your terminology, the what we call grand central place where things come together?
It comes together. In other words, ATP is the molecule that builds our chi. It's our chi energy. It's the reason why we're talking right now. I mean, during World War II, the German war criminals knew that cyanide would shut down the Krebs cycle, which forms ATP, and within 8 seconds you die. Without ATP, you can't survive. We only have 8 seconds in the body, and then we have to constantly make it.
Right, so Dr. Hurtak wrote a book, and it talks about the importance of ATP as actually almost a molecular machine of energy. And what's interesting is we believe that there are certain receptor sites within the body for emotions, for thoughts, for energy. There's the pyramid brain cells, but also there's ATP, which is actually a type of, triphosphate means it's a trinity type of arrangement. It goes from diphosphate to triphosphate. So it's one of these energies that are very sensitive to our thoughts, to our presence, to what we're thinking, to what we're doing. Water in the body, of course, is extremely important too. You know the work of Dr. Emoto, where you put positive thoughts into your body, and the water itself becomes this beautiful type of crystalline energy versus some sort of ugly kind of muddy scenario. So I think ATP also, even though you recommend certain pills for this, that is part of your work, but also the thoughts, do you feel that thought and energy can relate?
Yeah, I mean, what you said before, Desiree, is absolutely vitally important. The worst message a doctor can give to his patient is you have 6 months to live. That's the worst thing a doctor can do. I would always turn it around. I would always tell my patients with severe heart failure or cardiomyopathy or even cancer, I would always say, I'll see you in 6 months in the office. And they would come back to me and say, Doc, you think I'll be around? And I say, absolutely, why wouldn't you be? And you have to, what a good healing physician needs to do is inculcate into the patient that they can get well. Because if the patient believes it, and if the patient gets rid of this negative self-talk, negative thinking, and believes that, their lifestyle changes, they're getting rid of emotional toxicity, taking supplements, eating a healthy diet, drinking the right waters, using mind-body interventions, basically thinking positive thoughts, all these factors are a recipe for being well and getting well.
The reason we're having this conversation is all three of us are professionals, we work worldwide, and we realize that meditation is a very important part of our daily panacea of being able to deal with the situations we all have to face with. What are your views on meditation? Why is it so important in terms of what you'll call a higher circulatory process?
Well, everybody knows that meditation calms the mind, it reduces cortisol, it increases DHA, so biochemically it makes sense to meditate. But you're taking it to a higher level. And I think with the possibility of chaos occurring from economic uncertainties.
And even the electronic seance of having to deal with commercials and we will call sitcoms and feature films that deal only with negative
results.
And I would say that Dr. Sinatra also doesn't like all the wireless cell phone towers taking place everywhere. He feels that actually can hinder some of these meditations.
All of these things on the horizon that require us to take a step back, a deep breath, and realize that we are a living vessel of light and love, and meditation plays a so.
Yeah, because we're electrical. We're electrical beings. I mean, we are flesh and bone, but basically we are electrical. And what meditation will do, especially in a time where there could be crisis, there's also enormous opportunity. And coming where both of you are coming from is basically when we meditate, and if we ask for insights or answers, for solutions or help, then it can be revealed in our intuition. And it's our intuition that is very powerful right now. And when we develop our intuitive self, especially in the days and the weeks or the months that are coming, we have to rely on our intuitive selves. And remember, when I wrote the book Heartbreak and Heart Disease years ago, if a woman betrays her greatest asset, which is her intuition, women have it much more profoundly than men. But if a woman betrays her intuition, her inner knowing, her inner self, then she invites heart disease into her life. Because she actually cuts a vital connection to herself. See, it's the cessation of a vital connection that leaves the heart to spin out of rhythm or go out of rhythm or literally break down.
And so in our affirmations and declarations daily, we must be true to ourselves. We must see ourselves as vessels of love. And also all of us have this amazing healing power, as you've shown through your many books. I wanted to say also to our audience that you've had a background in Gestalt psychology and training, but also in what is called bioenergy.
Bioenergetics, yeah.
Could you explain a little bit about this, why it's so important?
Yeah. One of the reasons I became a bioenergetic psychotherapist is because it's the energy aspect of healing that's so vital. Let me give you an example. If a person has blocked energy in their chest, they don't breathe correctly, for example, or if they've had overwhelming sadness or depression and they're hunched over and they're not taking deep breaths, they can invite heart disease into their life, just on the basis of breathing. And actually, the Polish researchers showed this, that poor breathing actually produces a chemical called thromboxane A2, which clots the blood. And basically, when we do yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong, but especially yoga, when we breathe in, to the stretching, we breathe into the uncomfortableness or the posture. We actually support heart rate variability, and we actually develop more oxygen. And when we do that, we're making the blood thinner, and we're actually attenuating what we call our autonomic nervous system. So it all makes sense. These ancient healings, you know, it's the Sanskrit and the yoga of centuries ago, makes perfect sense to me. What we have to be mindful of is when we bring these modalities to the table, especially meditation or breathing, stillness, when we quiet ourselves, then we lower the autonomic nervous system. We allow for more balance for both nervous systems to intertwine, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, and we bring down our biochemicals.
Great writer, author by the name of Dr. Gerber wrote a book called Vibrational Medicine. And I relate to this book because he looked at some of the published material that I put on vibrational medicine, study from ancient sources. And I know you work with contemporary sources. And I'd like you to give some additional ideas of what is a recipe for how we can raise our consciousness.
Well, Gerber was an incredible pioneer. I mean, he wrote that phenomenal book in 1984, which is probably the best book on the subject, Vibrational Medicine. And what Gerber did for me and for all of us was establish the future of medicine. And the future of medicine is really vibration. Look, basically there are good vibrations and bad vibrations. Now, when the vibration goes up, let's say you're eating healthy organic food and drinking nice clear water without chemicals or insecticides or pesticides, you're doing mind-body medicine, you're meditating, your vibration goes up. What will bring your vibration down? Well, the worst thing is living in a false self. If you tell a lie, for example, even a lie, a misrepresentation will lower your vibration. How? Because your autonomic nervous system, your primitive nervous system knows the truth. And when you betray yourself with a lie, then that will bring you down. Living in entitlement, in the energy of entitlement, brings our vibration down. Drugs and alcohol bring our vibration down. So it's energy blocks or emotional toxicity that create disease, whether it's heart disease or cancer. And to thwart off disease, or to keep disease or dis-ease out of our life, we need to improve our vibration. Living in a true self, loving others, offering unconditional love, living out of the shadow emotions. In other words, don't focus on negativity. A lot of us have suppressed emotions. We live in sadness, we have anger, we have shame, but it's hidden in the body. It can't be expressed. Let me give you a great example. A lot of us are sad, but we don't know it. But if we go to a movie that touches our sadness, we say, oh, the movie made us cry, and we'll be crying in the movie, and people will say to me, oh, the movie made me cry. No, the movie did not make you cry. It touched the sadness that we all have. And getting out sadness or getting out tears is the most healing thing you can do to your body. I have to tell you, from being a cardiologist and a psychotherapist for years, crying is the healthiest emotion for alleviating the heartbreak and relieving heart disease.
And that's a man saying that, so that's an amazing statement. I also want to say, when people talk about breathing, especially the Sanskrit, that it's not from the chest, it's actually from the stomach, abdomen, from the lower part. So that's very important if you want to look into deep breathing, or even how breathing should be. It's not from the upper structure, it's from the lower structure. And the stomach actually should be moving in and out because of the abdomen rising. So that's important to understand. I think also what Dr. Hurtak addresses in End of Suffering is the idea that we are all interconnected, and some of that sadness comes from our idea that we are separate. And when we start seeing the interconnectedness that we all share, that shows us that we have this greater love that we never lose. We always have that love within us, and that's so important. I think also, in addition to that, the idea of seeing a movie and being sad is because you tap into that aspect of yourself that sees the interconnectedness with the movie itself.
And also seeing the divine spark in all individuals we come in contact with.
And I know your new book is going to be talking about this connection, is it called?
Yes,
Connections.
yes.
Because we are all interconnected. And we're really vibratory fields of energy. I think that's what's really important. That ties into our work. That the physical body is only one aspect of a higher vibratory field that really is our true self. And so we're really thinking of operating mainly from that higher vibratory field. When you correct and clear and energize that higher vibratory field, what happens in your physical body also is transformed.
And so as we go into the future, and you work with some of the best, you've lectured throughout the world, how do you see the future of medicine?
It's bright, it's very bright. We need to get away from the pharmaceutical dark age, because that'll bring our vibration down. Now look, In emergency situations, we have to have certain medications. I mean, that's given. But the problem is we become a pharmaceutical society where many people are taking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 drugs. I call it pharmacologia, where there's too much drugs. And what does that do? It causes us to sleep. In other words, it's bringing our vibration down. And what we need to do is to really increase that vibration. So we need to get away from drugs, and we just need to focus on the greater good. Once we focus on the greater good, we increase our vibration. Grounding is another great way. I love walking barefoot. I love sleeping grounded. Whenever you bring the energy of Mother Earth, that wonderful energy into your body, again, is healing the body. Not only thins the blood and improves heart rate variability, it lowers cortisol. There's an awesome amount of biochemical and metabolic positive reactions that occur with grounding. So it's a lot of simple things people can do.
Let's talk about that for a minute. I know you're also famous for this and you have other tapes on grounding, but actually you also feel we're working with a lot of electronics, we're using electricity all the time from all the technologies we have, and you're building that a little bit into your system, or a lot. And when you wear rubber shoes, which is very common now, everyone goes out and buys, whatever shoes they can find, it's almost always rubber soles, you're not able to discharge that
You're
energy.
disconnected from the earth.
Yeah. So walking barefoot or wearing certain
Leather shoes will do it. Yep, leather shoes will help.
and that allows this energy flow to take place between you and the earth. I think that's extremely important.
Very
Yes.
important.
Also, the use of electronic gear to keep this away from the vital
Yes,
organs.
yes, I'm glad you
For
brought that
cell
up.
phones.
Yeah, and my plea to our listeners would be this: throw your cordless phones out. They belong in the
The
trash.
ones in your house especially.
The ones in your house, because if you have a cordless phone in your house, it's like having a cell antenna. It's like having one of those, cell phone towers in your home, and they're going off 24/7. If you use a cell phone, please don't put it next to your ear. Use a speakerphone. If you have Wi-Fi in your house, take it out and go Ethernet, a plug-in,
Or turn it off at night.
or turn it off at night. And again, try to use as minimal amount of electricity. Don't get near like hair dryers or refrigerators or any electrical appliances. Even an electronic clock near your brain at the bedside, a foot away, can over time cause a lot of toxicity. We call them electromagnetic forces, but again, it can break down DNA and cause cellular weakening, which can also weaken the body.
Because we are a bioenergetic body. We're electrical.
So there's good vibrations and there's bad vibrations.
Every cell, in fact, I think it's the membrane of the cell membrane, that actually works with positive and negative electrical flow, isn't that? So everything, all the energy that goes into your cells and out of your cells is all working with that flow.
Right.
My book, the Book of Knowledge, Keys of Enoch, in 1973, spoke of the medicine of light, that ultimately we would graduate into a holistic use of medicine, connecting with other holistic practices. The whole spectrum of science would move forward with the quantum change. We recognize that all life is vibrations, and as we redefine ourselves as vessels of light and love, then there would be a marriage of the consciousness aspect and the scientific aspect into a new reality of new being. And so with that in mind, if we can all visualize here in this wonderful area of Bimini, the symbol of Jonathan Livingston's seagull being changed now into a great white dove over our heads, if we can see this dove in our mind's eye encircling the planet, out of each of the tips of the wings, multiple colors are streaming. A great rainbow of color encircles the planet. And from our heart, we feel the compassion and the unconditional love of our higher divine purpose. The divine spark has come alive. Each of the 7 chakras are sealed, begins to open in this precious body temple we call the Temple of Spirit. And we pray and we meditate at this moment the joy of the dove, of healing, of peace, of divine purpose and surrender to unite all peoples of Mother Earth with the divine mothering nature of spirit throughout higher creation. Whether we use the word La Paloma in Spanish for the dove, or whether we use it in any language as the spirit of life and love, we see this multitude of colors pour off the top of our head, reaching the dove and bringing us into the age of the divine spirit, the age of what I call the cosmic Pentecost experience, where we can speak all languages of love, work with all peoples and cultures of life, and realize that we are the divine vessel, the Holy Spirit, what the ancient prophets called the Ruach HaKodesh. With these words, may we be blessed as vessels of the divine dove, the messenger of light, and the symbol of rebirth and regenesis.
Perhaps Dr. Sinatra can give us a few final words?
I just want to pick up on your metaphor. I think your metaphor was absolutely outstanding, because if times get uncertain, or if we're into despair or into depression or into these, I call them the shadow emotions. If we're into these emotions, think about the dove. Focus on the dove. Meditate on the dove, because the dove is there to save us and empower us. That's what the dove will do. It'll empower us into the area of love and peace and unconditional acceptance and love, and that's where we all have to go.
And so from the sands of Bimini to all of you throughout the world, we say, may peace prevail on earth, and may the spirit of the dove vibrate within us in the creation of a positive future. On behalf of the Academy for Future Science, Desiree and I would like to thank you for your great work and the great future we share with all of you throughout humankind. Peace and joy, divine spirit.